periods of time, he trimmed. Damn, what the fuck? Oh, I thought my phone cut off. By the time he started making these trips outside of Rome, he had already trimmed off the Praetorian Guard. Not necessarily saying that he fired them, but like, those who were kind of like stationed directly outside of Rome, he had them stationed within the city. So being that he left, and then he left this guy, Lucius alias Sejanus, in charge, and also, according to Wikipedia, another thing that kind of validated the fact that he had a little bit more power, being that he was left in charge, that they claimed that Tiberius referred to him as his partner in labor. Now, being that they trimmed off the Praetorian Guard, they had them within the city, it was about like 6,000 to 9,000 of them. And not just that, as far as like messages that Tiberius would send or messages that he would receive, Sejanus would kind of like be in control of that. You know what I'm saying? So a little conspiracy kind of like happened after that, to where he started putting a lot of people on trial within the city of Rome, a lot of senators, and then he started killing their ass off and exiling all kind of people. For example, Germanicus, the general that got poisoned or whatnot. And also forgot to mention this. No, actually I did mention this, alright. As far as the general that got poisoned, his wife, which was a widow, they had 2 children. I believe they both were adults as far as the children that they had. Something happened to where, amidst Sejanus making all these moves and putting people on trial and exiling them, there were some of the people that got exiled. So his wife, Germanicus' wife, and her 2 children got exiled, and then they died mysteriously. You know what I'm saying? Nobody knows why. Now, this occurred in 30 AD. A year after that, when Tiberius found out what was going on, because, it's claimed that this guy, Sejanus, wanted power. So even though he killed off a lot of the Julian family, he had some of them put in positions. Like they say, he courted some of them or whatever. And he may have done that so he himself could become the next emperor. Basically, kind of like setting the framework for that. So Tiberius found out about this, so he had sent a letter to the Senate. This is in 31. He sent a letter to the Senate and had it read out loud. And when it was read out, it was said for Sejanus to be executed, and he got killed like within a week of that. So that's basically all the events up until that point. And then one more significant thing that happened under, I think that's it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. After that, Tiberius had died or whatnot. So he died in 37 AD? And if I'm forgetting something, I'll mention it by the time I get to the end of this. So that's when Caligula became the next emperor of Rome. Now, as far as like these, oh yeah, I know what I'm forgetting as far as Tiberius. Aside from him having that guy executed, he had other people executed as well. Those who were supposedly basically a part of his faction and these aims that he had. He had a lot of them killed as well. And they were called treason trials. He had to document it as far as the individuals. And some of the ones that he got placed in jail or whatever, he had an order to where they couldn't see their family members, or their family members could not see them or whatnot. So but before these treason trials could be completed, he ended up dying. So again, that's when Caligula became the next emperor. So this is 37 AD. The thing is, as part of his campaign to become the emperor, he did away with the treason trials, proclaiming that it was a new day, etc. or whatnot. And then he also I think they say he like increased the bureaucracy or something like that to include free man, etc. or whatever. But see, he himself ended up getting sick in the next year in 38 AD, and then after he recovered, he had to change the attitude. Once he had to change the attitude, he reinstituted these treason trials or whatnot. So the same people that he had exiled, or that were exiled, who didn't get killed, he had them placed back on trial, you know what I'm saying, and all the people that were suspicious, etc. Because one thing I forgot to mention is that also when he came into office, he also brought back some of the individuals that were exiled under Tiberius himself, all right? So these treason trials continued or whatnot. Now the thing is, he was also considered like somebody that kind of like had an anti-Semitic attitude against the Jews, because it was a lot of shit that was going on within the Empire of Rome at the time, especially between the Jewish citizens and the so-called Greek citizens. Again, that's synonymous with Roman citizens, you know what I'm saying? How do I know that? Because the Islamic history that I read and how they also referred to Romans as the Greeks, and I'm talking about the Byzantinians. They still refer to them as Greeks. So basically, Roman citizens and Jews didn't get along. By 40 AD, the place in Judea that I mentioned as far as Jamna, it was riots that had took place between Jewish citizens and Roman citizens. Also during that same year in Egypt between Jewish and Roman citizens. Now as far as in Jamna, it was an altar that was I guess it was like I think it was some type of altar that was erected from the Roman citizens, and some of the Jewish citizens got offended by that or whatnot, you know, so they tore the altar down, and in response to that, Caligula had their temple in Jerusalem changed, and he also changed the name of their temple to, what was it? Gaius the Illustrious New Jupiter. You know what I mean? So it was changed from a temple of Jewish worship into a temple of the worship of the religion that he believed in and that the Roman citizens believed in. So it was kind of like a further slap in the Jewish citizens, which is also a testament to his attitude of the Jews within the Roman Empire in general. Now, also aside from that, it was a guy named Cassius Chaerea. All right, he wasn't a prefect, but he was a part of this military faction responsible for protecting the emperors. Right. And whenever, this is Wikipedia, whenever he would interact with Caligula, you know, Caligula would kind of like, because Caligula didn't like him. He felt like he was a little, like his voice was weak and that he was feminine or whatever. So whenever he interacted with him, he'll kind of, you know, psychologically insult him, use certain terms, certain gestures, etc. So this guy, along with others, conspired to have him killed, in which they succeeded. By the time 41 AD came, I think they said like Caligula was giving a speech or something like that, and that's where they ambushed and attacked him and stabbed him up. As far as like the fellow Praetorian guards around, as far as them, you know, they caught the people that did that, killed many of them off, etc. And later on, Cassius Chaerea was executed for that. Now, also Tiberius, right, was coveted. You know, I'm talking about like during this whole incident where that guy got stabbed up or whatever, and then chaos ensued following that. So some of the Praetorian members or whatever, they kind of like, you know, they protected this guy and then voted him. I'm talking about Tiberius Claudius. That's when they voted him to be the next emperor or whatever. So that took place in 41 AD. Now, before I go on to that, it's one more notable thing that happened under Caligula that I forgot. It was like a year. It was also during the year of this conflict, as far as like in Jamna, and then the Jews also rioting in Egypt. That same year in 40 AD, that's when they finally, this is the first time, this is a precedent for the Romans. That's when they finally annexed Mauritania into their empire. Before that, they had good relations with them because the king of Mauritania, his name was Ptolemy, not the Great, Ptolemy of Mauritania, right? He was supposed to have been a Berber king at the same time, and he was from a dynasty called the Myceles dynasty. What happened with him, as far as him, Caligula had him invited into Rome. You know, if y'all seen that movie Braveheart, remember like at the very beginning of it with William Wallace, when he was a young boy, and the narrator was explaining what was going on as far as like his father. Yeah, William Wallace. I think he was a narrator. I ain't seen the movie in so long. But at the beginning of it, you know, his father was a part of the nobles that had a meeting with factions of England. and they had ended up getting ambushed, and they killed all of these nobles that showed up to this meeting or whatever. It's kind of like similar to that as far as Ptolemy of Mauritania. They invited him into Rome, and they killed his ass off. And then from that point, that's when they annexed Mauritania. Even though fights ensued, but ultimately it resulted in them annexing Mauritania. That was like the last notable event that took place under Caligula. Now going back to 41 AD, as far as Tiberius Claudius. The first notable, I guess you could say, incident or thing that took place was 43 AD. He had got word of the, I don't want to say richness, but somebody gave him some intel basically as far as England is concerned, right? And how rich they could have been as far as in slaves and etc. So Tiberius Claudius decided to attack them. So he sent 4 legions there to conquer England, right? And the legions was under a general by the name of Aulus Petronius, who ended up being successful ultimately. And they gained ground there, and after he gained ground there, that's when Tiberius Claudius also went into England himself. And the capital at the time, which was named Camulodunum, or the place Camulodunum today is in Colchester, England. He decided to make that the capital, and then he called that the province as far as England. He called that the province of Britannia. That was the first thing that happened under his reign. Let me see after that. I know they were saying like he also, he was accused of showing favoritism and trying to bribe his Praetorian Guard by increasing their pay and stuff like that. I don't really put too much into that because to me, I just look at it like, if Caligula was assassinated and the Praetorian Guard, protected Tiberius Claudius and also voted him, because he was the first emperor at this point to be voted into office by the Praetorian Guard instead of through the Senate or whatnot. You know what I'm saying? So as far as them claiming that he kind of manipulated them by giving them more pay and all that type of stuff, I don't really consider that manipulation. I consider it a little bit of favor, only because they saved his life and also gave him power. So he increased their pay, but he didn't just increase their pay, he also increased the pay of the Roman army in general or whatnot. So let me see. That's pretty much it. Not really too much notable as far as him. I know, let me see, about 54 AD, he died, but he's actually poisoned, so-called, you know what I mean, because his wife at the time, it was a lady named Agrippina the Younger, I believe, Agrippina the Younger, and she was the mother of Nero. Now, Nero, who became the next emperor, wasn't the biological son of Tiberius Claudius, you know what I'm saying, but, he ended up marrying one of his stepsisters. Her name is Julia the Elder. He married her just to officialize, his kingship or whatever, or the probability of his kingship or whatever. And from that point, he officially became a Julian. Again, thus the Claudian-Julian dynasty. You know what I mean? The bloodline or whatever. So his mother was accused of killing or poisoning Tiberius Claudius. And I just thought about something. I mentioned it at the end of this. Something that I forgot to mention at the beginning. So anyway, 54 AD, that's when Nero became the next emperor. Now, he was young at the time, so his mother, Agrippina the Younger, kind of, she was more so the one in power, even though she wasn't officially an emperor. So a lot of moves was made under her decision. But as far as him being a young boy, she did give him a tutor or a guide. Now, this guy right here, his name was Lucius Annaeus Seneca or whatever. And also the prefect at the time, his name was Sextus Afranius Burrus, all right? Him and Nero ended up, developing a relationship. So by the time 59 AD came, they conspired, and then he had his mother assassinated. You know what I mean? That guy pretty much, as far as the prefect, he he facilitated this, and the lady got killed or whatnot. Then after that, let me see, the next notable event was around 64 AD. 64 AD, a great fire, or what they call the Great Fire of Rome, took place. 2/3 of Rome ended up being burned. The exact date was June the 19th. Fire started around their stadium. I forget the name of the stadium, but it's Maximus something. It was, you know, the big ass stadium that could house almost 200,000 people. Exactly 160,000 people. A fire started there. That shit took place for like 6 days, and they finally put it out. But during that same day, somehow it reignited for an additional 3 days. So the fire lasted a total from June 19th up until June 28th. At the end of that, 2/3 of Rome was burned. Now, again, going back to the Wikipedia articles, some people believe that the fire was set on purpose under the orders of Nero because it was a palace that he wanted built, that he started working on during that same year, 64. And it was called Domus Aurea, or Domus Aureas, or whatnot. Now, there was also issues going on as far as like the governor of Spain, and then the governor of the province of, I forget the name of this province, but I think it's called Luke Dunham or something like that. But it was basically a province of Spain. It was different, I mean not Spain, but France, even though it bordered it. And the guy that was the head of that province, as far as the one in France, his name was Vindex. And then the guy that was the head of the province of Spain, his name was Gaba. You know what I'm saying? So they already had little issues, even though Wikipedia didn't really specify. But before I continue with that, I want to touch on a Jewish portion because I thought this was interesting too. Because during his reign is when the first Jewish-Roman war took place or whatever. The first Jewish-Roman revolt. Now, based on Wikipedia, they were saying it was like a total of 3 of them or whatnot. Now, going back to the first one, okay, it's 66. Now, when you go back to Judea, for instance, the king of Judea at the time was a guy named Agrippina II. Hold on, let me light my cigarette. I'm finna hurry up because it's getting dark out this motherfucker. Agrippina II. And I want to say he became, I could be incorrect, but if I'm not mistaken, he became the Jewish king at the time of the province of Judea in 64. But I know for sure, as far as like the governor, the Roman governor, his name was Nestorius. Now he became the governor in 64 as well. Now, I know that for sure. But as far as the king, Agrippina II, I'm not sure. But I'm just to be safe, I'm going to assume 64 the same year. Now he was supposed to have been a pro-Roman king. All right. As far as the governor, you know, they claim he kind of had like anti-Semitic attitudes as well. Like he wasn't fair with the Jewish population there. And as far as Agrippina II, he's kind of like considered a, I don't want to say Uncle Tom, but if I want to be even more euphemistic than that, I would say he was passive when it came to unfairness between Roman citizens and the Jews. This is why I say that. Okay, when Nestorius Gallus became the governor in 64 AD, this is in Caesarea Maritima, right? Situation had occurred based on Wikipedia to where they say some guy was outside a temple or something like that, but you know he had sacrificed some birds or something like that on the altar or on top of a pot. You know, they said earthenware. On top of a pot, he sacrificed several birds, right? So it was a direct disrespect to the Jewish religion. So they kind of took a gentlemanly approach at the time, and some of their officials, you know, they complained to not the king, but the governor himself, Nestorius Gallus. Now, this was kind of telling that because I didn't know that you had to pay money, you know what I mean, for people of that type of authority to hear your complaints. Based on Wikipedia, these officials paid money for this guy to hear their complaints. Now remember, he already kind of like harbored, you know, a negative attitude towards the Jews or was really dismissive of their concerns. So when they went to speak to this guy and they, complained to him or vented to him what was going on, they say he heard their complaints, but he was dismissive. He didn't care what they had to say. And not only that, after he heard their complaints, he kept their money, but he also had them locked up at the same time. So as far as like within Judea itself, a lot of their citizens felt some type of way. So an uprising was starting to snowball. Now, going back to the king of the Jews at the time, Agrippina II, he met with these people or whatever. He basically told them, like, okay, this is unfair, but just try to deal with it or whatnot. You know what I'm saying? They didn't want to. So some of the leading officials also in protest, they had pots passed around to where, they'll ask people for donations or whatever. Not because they themselves needed the money, but they was trying to, like, mock the emperor at the time, Nero, basically saying that he was poor because, I don't want to confuse this event with Caligula, but it was money that was also taken out of the Jewish temple at the same time or something like that. Money taken from the Jewish temple. And I don't want to confuse that happening itself with what took place with Caligula. But anyway, aside from that, I know one thing for sure as far as like to respond to these people that was protesting and mocking the emperor. The emperor, he sent officials there, and I believe he took more money out the treasury. He responded in some type of fashion to where, they got extremely offended by that. So that's when the people decided to rise up. So you had different factions within the Jewish community in Judea or whatnot. So, the temple that they had at the time, like these, like it was a walkway leading to various entrances or whatever on the Temple Mount. As far as like the walkway that they call cloisters, in protest, some of the Jewish citizens, they kind of like, they dismantled that shit, start breaking shit or whatever. And so Gallus was in Syria at this point, so he marched into Jerusalem, to respond to this and attack people or whatever. And then that's when shit kind of like hit the fan or whatever. And then various leaders of different Jewish factions rise up or whatever, and they attacked the military garrison in Jerusalem and ran them out. Now this is 66, and this is when the Romans officially lost Jerusalem. Now, even though Nero died in 68, they didn't get the city back as far as Jerusalem until 70 AD. But the war still continued 2 years in addition after that point up until 72. Now, going back to this little uprising as far as within the Jewish communities of Judea and different key figures a part of it, one that I know for sure, his name was Simon Bar Giora. Now, being that you had different factions within the Jewish community, a lot of them supposedly came from the upper class. Now, this guy in particular was from the lower class of the Jewish community or whatever, but he was noted for being extremely ruthless. You know what I'm saying? And that gained him popularity. Now, because of that, you had these semi-rivalries also between him and fellow leaders of these Jewish factions or whatever. So, inner fighting occurred as well. Long story short, Nestorius Gallus, also, I think Agrippina II was also ran out of Jerusalem or whatnot. So then, going back to this mutiny, for lack of a better word, as far as like the governor of Spain, this is in 68, by the way. Going back to this mutiny, the governor of Spain, and then the governor of France, Vindex. Wikipedia said, like, whatever reason that they uprise or rebel against the Romans, it wasn't clear. But the particular aims in which they didn't specify either, and none of these Wikipedia articles, when I fucking research, in addition, backtrack, did all that, they never specify the aims. Whatever aims that they had, they did not succeed in those aims either. But the weird thing, as far as like the factions of Rome, they sided with that guy Galba in particular. That's one thing that they did mention, and because of that, that's when Nero decided to leave Rome. He fled or whatnot. And so he was embarrassed, so he wanted to commit suicide and fall upon his sword. Now, this part is interesting right here because even though he wanted to fall upon his sword, it was a gladiator in particular by the name of Spiculus that he wanted to kill him because he honored that guy so much. Now, before I even decided to do like additional research about this whole dynasty, the Claudian Julian dynasty, I had read about Spiculus. I came across him incidentally, and I thought he was interesting because not just him being a popular gladiator, but the fact that he was a black guy within Rome itself. You know what I'm saying? Not the Roman Empire, but the city of Rome itself. They said he was a black guy, he was dark-skinned, he had locks and red locks, and he was one of the most popular gladiators, and he was somebody that Nero was really awed by. So going back to this, Nero wanted to commit suicide. Now, it's not proven whether or not this guy Spiculus performed the execution, but it is said that Nero wanted him to perform the execution. Whether he did or not, or whether Nero fell upon his sword, that is the year that he died. Now, that's that. Now, that's the whole history of the Claudian dynasty, the Julian Claudian dynasty, because he was the last one of the dynasty. So I thought that was interesting. Now, in reading this, I'm like, okay, so far, no mention and no hint of a Jesus Christ was made whatsoever, even during the period of Herod the Great. Now, going back to these 4 historians that these articles extracted their information from, they made no mentions of Jesus either. But the guy Josephus the First, 2 days ago when I read about him again, it is claimed that in one of his books, there is a mention to Jesus and the guy Pilates or whatever his name is who executed him. But in that particular document, it's disputed because they're saying it's not of the original source or it's not the original copy or whatever. So it's potential manipulations that occurred. Now, this is my thing. Even though I wanted, this is just fair on my part, you know what I mean, leading up to Bazaar of Heracleides. I feel like this is being responsible, trying to get, the background information as far as the period of Jesus, and seeing if there's a mention of him. But ultimately speaking, here's the thing. Whether Jesus existed or not doesn't matter to me. Why do I say that? Because going back to the ancient Arian or conservative Arian, Arian, interpretation or concept of Jesus, what I think overall, not just metaphysically, but, I guess you could include the history of him into the picture as well. What I think overall, their view is closer to mine, all right? Not just Arius himself, but the guy later on who was given credit as well for this conservative Arian view of Jesus, which basically teaches that he was basically a mere man. That's why I kind of agree with them or feel like, their view doesn't necessarily contradict my view overall in general. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I say, it doesn't matter whether Jesus existed or not. If he did exist, I still would side with the Arian conservative view of Jesus. You get what I'm saying? Because it's more so aligned with my beliefs in general. Not just in Jesus, but in general. You get what I'm saying? The only reason why I kind of went through these emperors of the Claudian Julian dynasty is just to get a fair look, historically speaking, and seeing whether or not there's a big hint or a mention of Jesus. You know what I'm saying? It's not necessarily it's not necessarily to try to shit on anything. It's just to validate certain things for my own clarity. Get what I'm saying? So that's the reason why, when I researched these emperors, I took a little bit more than just a cursory look. But this is the point that I reached so far. So far, leading up to the book, you know what I'm saying? The Bazaar of Heracleides or whatnot. But as far as the title of these blogs leading up to that book, and this is going to be considered part 5 officially. You know what I'm saying? Even though I'm going to have to break this up on on Instagram when I post it. You know what I'm saying? Just because of the time, because I'm not able to put videos more than 15 minutes on IGTV. So I'm going to have to break these up. But officially speaking, this is like part 5. You know what I'm saying? So again, just taking like a historical look, trying to see what's what. And as far as like, going deeper and deeper into this, Wikipedia is just to get me more familiar. I'd rather read those actual books itself, especially the one from Josephus. I'd rather go through the book, get everything that I feel like is pertinent as far as like the life period of Jesus, and seeing that he actually mentioned him. Now, let's just say he did. Let's just say, that is uh 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 just, you know what I mean, like legitimate basically. Let's just say in whatever documents that he wrote, there is a legitimate mention of Jesus. That's good. You know what I mean? But even if that's the case, again, I still agree with the Arian conservative interpretation of Jesus, the ancient Arian conservative interpretation of Jesus, because again, it's closer to my own belief in particular. Again, you see what I'm saying? So this is just a fair look. So that's it basically, you know what I'm saying, leading up to the book. So finally got this out the way. I got rough drafts and all that, but I got that shit covered. I did a video 2 days ago, but it was a few things that I left out and I wanted to redo it again. So I documented it, but it's still private on my page. So that's pretty much that. Alright, YouTube and Instagram, it's your boy JL Dark Poetry 36. God damn it, if you disagree with my thoughts, man, I'm completely open. Let me know what you think. Y'all have a good night.